All right, guys, so we've been using object literals throughout the whole course, really. And in this video, I wanted to get a little bit deeper into it. And I also want to talk about the this keyword, which is really important in object-oriented programming, and also show you the limitation of using object literals as well. Now, the example I'm going to use a lot throughout these videos are going to be shapes, because with shapes, we can have them as objects that have methods like get area if you want to get the area of a rectangle, or get the perimeter or the radius, etc. So I think that it's a good example to use rather than having methods on a user class that like register and it just console logs register user. I want it to actually do something, get something useful. All right, so let's go ahead and create an object literal, and I'm going to create a rectangle. That's what we're going to mostly be dealing with. And I'm going to set it to an object literal, which is just curly braces. And then we have key value pairs. These are called properties, and I know we've already gone over this, but let's give it a name. I'll call it rectangle1. And then we're going to have a width, say 10, and then I'll say height. You could use length as well, but I'm just going to have a width and a height. All right, and we already know that if we have an object and we want to access a property, we use dot notation. You can see VS Code pulls up my properties here. Let's go ahead and choose name, and we get rectangle1. So nothing new here. Now, one thing I don't believe that I showed you yet is that we can also have methods in our object literals. So for instance, let's say we want to get the area of the rectangle. So I'm going to make that a function. Now I could use the function syntax like this, or I could use an arrow function. So I could also do this. Right now I want to actually, you know what, I'm going to use the other syntax just to keep it simple, and that's what I have in the documentation as well for the course. So right now I'm just going to return true and show you that we can call this area method by simply doing rectangle dot area, but we do have to add our curly brace, our parentheses, because this is it's a function, right? A method is a function. So we get true. Now, in order to access any of these properties from within this method, I can use the this keyword, and this pertains to this object, okay? Now with object literals, it's just a single object. When we start to get into constructor functions and classes, you'll see we can create multiple instances of each object, and this is always going to pertain to that particular instance. So let's go ahead and let's return from this. We'll say this dot, and let's take the width and let's multiply, let's say this dot height, and then if I save that, we get 100. All right, if I change width to 20 and we save that, then we get 200. And of course, this dot width is only going to be within the object. If I were to come out into the global scope and do a console log of this, that gives us the window object. I believe I already told you that. So when we first run our JavaScript file, the execution context in the creation phase, the first thing it does is create the window object. The second thing it does is assigns it to this. Even if we have it in a function scope, so if I say function run and I move console log this down into here and then we run that function, you can see that it's still going to be the window object. Now, where the drawback is, I guess you could call it, of object literals is that you really only use it if you're using single instances or single objects, right? If I wanted to create another rectangle, I mean, I could do that, but I would have to recreate this entire thing. So let's copy that. Let's say we want this one to be rectangle2 is going to be the variable. It'll have a name of rectangle2. Let's say we want to give it we'll say 3020. And then if we want to get the area of rectangle2, we can, right? We can say rectangle2.area and we get 600. But what if we have 100 rectangles? We're just going to copy this over and over? Absolutely not. So that's where that's kind of the drawback of object literals. So in order to do that, if we want to create 100 different rectangles, we need some kind of blueprint to create from. and that's where constructor functions come in, and that's where we're going to look at next.